Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome back to another YouTube video. So what I want to do today is a continuation, you could say like part 3, but really this is kind of the main part 1 of a series of videos that kind of talk through an ongoing mentorship that I'm involved with. If you haven't seen the previous 2 videos, just have a look on the channel. It's like the mentorship that changed my business, or finally getting the help I actually need, right? Very clickbaity titles. But yeah, what I want to do today is kind of talk through the lessons, learnings, reflections that I've had based on kind of session 1 or part 1 of this mentorship. That's been 2 sessions, one 90-minute session and one half-an-hour session, basically kind of digging into a lot of different things. And in this video, what I'm just going to do is kind of talk through what we've spoken about, talk through the main lessons and learnings and points of interest and reflections, in the hopes that somebody that's watching this, might be you, might be somebody that you know, also aligns with some of the things that I'm talking about here. And ultimately, you could have the advice for free, right? I'm also making this one for myself to look back on. I think that this would be a fantastic video to look back on in the future, just to kind of see, okay, that was the exact point when kind of those unlocks or those reflections happened. So this is probably going to be a long video because there's been a fair few reflections and kind of lessons within this. So if you're interested at all, stick around. It's going to be vulnerable. It's going to be a very deep dive into kind of me as a person, the things and the challenges that I'm struggling with, the things that I'm going to be working on over the next 6 months. And like I said, if you align with it or you're interested in becoming a videographer, photographer, freelancer of any kind, some of the things that I speak about in this video may resonate with you. So if they do, that's great. And let's dive into the lessons. Okay, welcome to the Google Doc of Destiny. What we're going to be going over is clarity, grace, mission, and reflections. So let's give you a bit of context. I've basically been running the business for the past 4.5 years. I was freelancing for about 4 years before that as well. But really, we've only just settled into video as the long-term play over the past 1.5 years. I've always loved and had a passion for photo and video. I've been working within photo and video for nearly 10 years now, like 9, well, it's kind of like nearly 9 years basically. But over that time, we've done a ton of different things. We've done like web graphics, socials. We've done like paid ads. We've done like courses. There's so much stuff that we've done. And I've really only kind of settled into the fact that video is the long-term play, and really should have always been the long-term play for the past kind of 1.5 years, something like that as well. So that's kind of just a bit of context before we dive in. Now, a massive theme that has continued to come up over the interactions that I've had with Matt. So in our first session, which was about 90 minutes, and then these 2 sessions that we've had just now as well, is this question of like, what do you actually want to do, right? So the point is that I spent so long basically kind of doing any task that is required, and I haven't really stopped to clearly articulate what I'm actually building the business for and how I'm building the business for me in the long run, right? I've ultimately just kind of been doing anything and doing everything that it has needed me to do. And basically just kind of accepted the fact that that will always just be my role within the business, is to essentially do whatever is required in order to get us to where we want to get to, which would be, you know, like financial goals or work goals or client goals and that sort of stuff, right? However, I think there's been quite an interesting realization for me to actually be like, I get to choose, right? I'm building this for myself so that I can do the actual thing that I have always wanted to do, right? Give myself the financial and time freedom to decide what I want without the business dictating to me what that will be. Now, obviously, this is a long way off, right? We're going to have to get people and processes and systems in place in order for me to be able to do that. But what I would love to do is to be mainly involved in the creative direction of the projects, right? I'm going to make another video on this because this is a kind of a really core theme and an interesting reflection that's kind of come out of these sessions. But I think as creatives, like, you start a business or you start doing these things because ultimately you love the actual process. Like for me, I love making films. I love making videos. I love the process of tinkering with cameras. I'm like a gear whore, like everything, right? Like, I'm sure that you understand if you're interested and you've kind of made it even this far in the video. But the point is that I would love to be involved in the creative direction of projects with the freedom to choose the projects that I personally get involved with, right? I don't want the business to need me. Essentially, that's kind of the point that I'm making here, is that I want to have enough resources and enough profit, essentially, to not be needed in the business, but to be involved in the creative direction of projects, and pick and choose the specific projects that I want to get involved with, right? If it's a trip to Dubai, I'm there. If it's a trip to New York, like we've got coming up later in the year, or California at the start of next year, I'm there, right? But the point being is that that thing could happen without me, and it could be an entirely successful project without me needing to get involved. And I think that's the kind of the freedom that I'm working towards, you know? Also, I would love to continue to tinker around with the business, because over the past 4.5 years, I have learnt to love the process and the game of playing business. Essentially, tinkering with the numbers, tinkering with systems, understanding how you basically get interest from the market, turn that into attention, turn that attention into curiosity, right? Like, I could go on and on and on forever with this sort of stuff, but essentially, yeah, like, I would still, obviously, I'm going to be involved in the day to day, kind of really critical decisions within the business and looking at the data. But again, just based on the fact that I'm working towards this freedom point where the business doesn't actually need me to continue running. And I could just have the freedom to pick and choose really what I want to do within the business, right? So that's the whole clarity piece just here. The next theme or category, shall we say, is grace. So I currently kind of have this really extreme feeling of impatience. Like, feel like I've been walking for so long in the business, for the past 4.5 years, and ultimately, like, it's not where I want it to be. I think that is a result of hopping around, playing this game of kind of uninformed optimism, right? Where you think that that's the thing that's going to get you to where you are, and then you realize that, like everything in life, that thing also has problems and challenges and obstacles that you need to overcome, in order to do that. Now, obviously, I've kind of settled back into the fact that really the only discipline or service that I'm prepared to overcome those obstacles for is video, because it's the thing that I love the most, right? Um, but yeah, essentially, it's creating this feeling of impatience within me, that I've constantly cycled through these different service offerings and niches and business models and all of that sort of stuff, ultimately to kind of stay in a very similar position, financially, right? Now, is this then creating a subtle edge to my persona that kind of gives off a bit of a wound up, energy, right? I.e., not being at ease, within life. And this is something that Matt said just here, is that Oliver being in a more proud place in who he is and what he's trying to achieve, shoulders down, will give a much calmer outlook and massively translate to your customers. Now, this is something I've never really had to kind of double think or second guess the way that I come across as a person. I was always told as a child that I kind of have the gift of the golden gab, right? I can talk to people. I can, I don't struggle with social interaction, basically. And that's been massive for me in terms of building a business, because ultimately it's built on human to human connection, right? But I think it's interesting that this is the first time that someone's ever really pulled me up on the way that I come across. And I think that I've kind of fed into this impatience over the past 1.5 years, because I want things to be different, and I'm trying to go to certain places and that sort of stuff. But ultimately, I think it's about having pride in the work, in the mission, being driven from somewhere that's not wound up, that's actually more at ease, and then allowing those things to kind of flow to you and those opportunities to come to you, and being able to spot those opportunities in the market as well, and just being a bit more calm and a bit more easy, right? That's kind of the main thing here. Another thing that Matt said is, do you think that it's possible to get to your goal quicker or smoother without the excess pressure that you put on yourself to be great? I don't know. The point is that you can only, I think you can only assess this sort of thing based on experiences of people that you listen to, or kind of what your main kind of, if you want to call them like digital mentors. Like, I listen to a lot of podcasts, right? I listen to people like Chris Williamson with Modern Wisdom, Alex Hormozy with The Game, George Heaton as well from 247 and Represent, a massive kind of, I don't want to say idol, but like a massive, what do you even call this? Like, inspiration, right? Within kind of, within my life, let's say. And everybody that I listen to and take kind of advice from, this isn't the case, right? Which is which is interesting, but maybe that's just kind of the crowd that I'm attracted to, and the energy that kind of I'm kind of attracting to more within my life, right? And then off the back of this, if it's not possible to get to your goal. I think it's possible to get to your goal smoother. That's for sure, right? I don't think it's possible to get to your goal quicker. All the people that I listen to and take advice from, that's not the case. If it is, then what does that healthy pressure look like? How essentially can you motivate yourself to do the things that are a bit boring and are a bit hard and feel a bit painful, right? It's not actually painful, it's just a bit boring. Stuff that you've really got to kind of drag yourself through. How do you get yourself to do that in a healthy way? And how do you put pressure on yourself in a healthy way? I've always put pressure on myself by kind of having this mindset of like, it's not good enough. You need to be better. You need to be stronger. You need to be more ambitious, right? All of these things. Is it possible to do that in a healthy way? Because I don't think that the previous statements are sustainable over time, basically. Here's an interesting question. How do you have pride in yourself when you're not content with who or where you are in life? And is who we are linked with what we have to some degree, right? I think that everybody in their idyllic world would say that who you are is not linked with what you have. But I think that deep down, everybody knows that material possessions are ultimately an external demonstration of things you've been through and essentially who you are as a person, because in order to have nice things you have to do hard things to get there, right? And ultimately as humans we're playing this kind of status game, and I think we all know that somebody with a massive house and 5 cars on the driveway, I'm not saying I want those things, right? But that's just the first thing that came to mind. Somebody with those things has ultimately worked hard and sacrificed and done things that have afforded them those opportunities within their life. And it's a very easy external demonstration of success, right? So kind of this is just something that I'm like kind of marinating on and thinking about. I think that everybody would say no to this, but ultimately I think that everybody deep down knows that is the case, right? The things that you have done to get the things that you have, it tells the story, and that's kind of the main point here. Mission, right? Interesting. This one is a bit vulnerable. So if you have stuck around for whatever this might be, like 20 minutes, maybe something like that, this is a deep one for me. So our mission as a company has always been capture and promote life-changing moments. I've never really thought about it. I've never really gone past that as a statement in terms of like, why is that a thing? Like that's always just felt right to say. I can't particularly, it didn't take very long to come up with. It came very easy. And it wasn't really, I didn't need to kind of go any further. It just felt right, But then Matt challenged me. He was like, why? Why do you care about capturing and promoting life-changing moments? And ultimately, it's born from a deep desire to demonstrate there is good and connection in the world, right? That's kind of, the next layer, if we keep peeling back this onion. Now, of course, there is another reason behind that, which is kind of rooted in past traumas. And I'm really want to put these in inverted commas because I think that word is massively hyperbolized nowadays, right? The word trauma. I don't think I have trauma. I just think I have some past experiences that have been quite negative, but rooted in my past traumas where I didn't feel a strong connection in the world, right? I went to speak to my parents about this when we kind of had this realization. And one thing that my father and I were talking about was that when I was a child, my favorite story to listen to and be read to before I went to bed was called The BFG, right? The Big Friendly Giant by Roald Dahl. Now, if you haven't watched it, then that is awful. You need to go and watch it. I would say that the film, the 2016 film, is not that good, to be honest. I think that you're much better off either listening to the audiobook or reading it yourself. But anyway, the point being is that in the BFG, the Big Friendly Giant goes to this dream world to kind of go out and capture dreams, and then he stores them. And then what he does is he goes out into the world and he gives people dreams that direct the course of their life. Right, that is the massive TLDR of the entire film. Now, it's really interesting that was one of my favorite stories growing up, and what we're doing, or what I'm doing, and what I feel like is my main kind of mission and purpose, for right now at least, is to capture and promote life-changing moments, right? To store the proof of connection and inspiration and positivity within the world, to demonstrate and to give people what they need in order to go ahead and succeed, be it inspiration or motivation or whatever that might be. You know, we are literally going out into the world, capturing these moments and storing them in hard drives and MP4s in order to kind of distribute. And the way that we do that is through our clients, right? Through events, through these life-changing moments that happen, which is quite incredible, to be honest. Now, I don't know if I'm going to go much deeper into the past and stuff like that. I think it would be valuable, but ultimately I need to kind of clear a few things within my head first in order to feel comfortable kind of doing that and putting that out there, especially on the internet, right? But just know that the traumas of the past are ultimately the thing that has driven the ambition and fortitude and success thus far. And I think that kind of having an idea and an understanding of the impact that these things have had in my life is just going to be it's just this to me feels like a massive unlock, and to kind of have this on within 2 sessions really, and it was 1 session, is incredible. And I think it will do a lot for us, really from a marketing perspective moving forward, because it's the differentiator, right? How do you differentiate between one video company and another video company? It's the person, it's the founder, it's the story. Like, what we're doing is we're selling emotions, really. So that's really interesting. And I'm going to be really interested to essentially see how this develops into that kind of founder-led story over time as well. Let's look at some reflections, right? So the history of business names. So originally we were set up as Whitespace Collective. Then we changed that to Whitespace Creative, incorporated that as Whitespace Group Limited, and now we're trading under OG Films. We've had a lot of different names because we've done a lot of different things. And ultimately what we need to do as a very tactical thing is tighten up the digital experience of OG Films. So I'm still using old emails. Google Drive is still old emails, like contracts, accounts, everything like that. The company name's different. I feel like it just doesn't give off a cohesive feel for the brand. Like, everything doesn't come from the same place. Like I said, emails, websites, company names, all that sort of stuff, that should all come from OG Films. And I totally agree. And to be honest, the only reason why we haven't done that thus far is because it's going to be a massive pain in the ass, right? For the accountants, from a legal perspective, from a data perspective, everything we've got on Google Drive and all of that sort of stuff, like, it's just going to be a huge pain in the ass, and something that probably needs like a couple of weeks of like no shoots, no edits, nothing going on, just so we can kind of sit and concentrate and do that. But I do agree that that's something that needs to be done. This month specifically, so July, we're at the end of July now, was a super solid month for us in terms of metrics. So volume of appointments leading into calls, quotes, deals, revenue. The only thing that wasn't great was cash, but you've kind of got to think that when we sign a deal, we put in an invoice that then probably gets paid next month, and then when we finish a project, we get paid on the back end. So revenue and cash like really don't align in terms of their peaks and troughs. But ultimately, yeah, this month in terms of the metrics was absolutely fantastic, and a really ideal month. So if we could do that over and over and over again, what we've done this month, then that would be absolutely exceptional, and I'd be really happy with that. So what we're looking at now is what were the specific actions and things that have been done maybe last month and that have contributed to this being an outstanding month. So we need to then reflect on, okay, what was it? What happened? What changed? What do we do differently in order to get essentially a perfect picture month, right? And that's stuff that we'll be kind of diving into, in kind of future sessions and stuff like that as well. Another thing is that what I'm really good at as a person and as the business owner is nailing down the story, vision, and purpose of our clients' videos, and really beginning to actually understand the person that we're speaking to, their motivations, and ultimately efficiently just getting to the point of what we're there to do, right? That's kind of something that I can do very quickly. When I'm kind of speaking with a client after they've signed the project, we jump into a pre-production call, and I don't think it takes me long at all to really kind of nail down exactly what we're there to do and the point of our job, right? You know, what we're actually being brought in to do. But this isn't the most fulfilling aspect of my job and what we do. I don't particularly love those calls. Some parts of those calls are interesting for sure, but it's generally just kind of a fact-finding mission. And that's why I say that over the long term, I really want to be involved in kind of the creative process, because the you know, like the please upload your logos here, or what's 3 core messages that you want out of the video, or what's the end result. Like, they're just boring questions to me, and even though they're important and they're important for the success of the project, I'm just not interested in kind of sitting on calls for like an hour and a half with people and asking those questions. So that's interesting that it's probably the thing that I am the best at within the pre-production process, but I don't actually find that fulfilling. So we'll have to work through that one, that's for sure. One thing that we've been going back and forth on is the sales process and what it looks like, and ultimately, like, is it possible for us to front load the value as much as possible? In Matt's perspective, the buying decision of the customers is basically 80% made before they even turn up to the conversation or ask for a quote. So what can we do to increase the likelihood of our dream client getting in touch with us? I think this is going to be really, really useful for anybody that's actually watching this video in terms of how we take our marketing from currently where it is and our digital presence and our shop window. How do we take that and then how do we front load value onto the customer? Because the ideal scenario for me is that we're not doing any kind of cold DMs. If we are, they're follow-ups on kind of intent leads. But I really want the business to be the majority coming from inbound, right? So paid ads and then people finding us either through Google or word of mouth or whatever that might be. But when people do that, I feel like you have to put a ton of value up front so that they ultimately have that 80% assurance in their mind that these people are the people that we want. It's just a case of, do the budgets align? And essentially the reason why we're having the call is just so that they can confirm in their mind that they're making the right decision. You know, that final 20% is basically just a confirmation that you know, we are the right people to go with, and the budgets do align, and you know, we actually are kind of who we say we are, right? And again, I just kind of reference this, but what does our shop window look like? So for the longest time, I've kind of had the perspective that websites don't really matter and social media doesn't really matter, because I've kind of done everything outbound. And at the end of the day, like, I've built a business that can sustain you know, really a few people on purely kind of outbound efforts, right? So I've never really kind of placed much value or consideration on websites and socials, but from Matt's perspective, he always has. So I think it's really cool that I've not just met somebody that is like, yeah, you're completely right, like outbound, cold outbound is the way to go. They have much more of an inbound and paid ad strategy, which is why I wanted to do the mentorship in the first place, because it's something that I've never cared to invest kind of time and attention into, and therefore our shop window, I feel like, has always suffered. When I first set up the business, way back when, like November 2020, I spent so long, it was like 2 months of solid work building out this perfect website. Like, it was the best piece of design work that I've ever done, without a shadow of a doubt. And ultimately we had never had an inbound inquiry. So like, I think that was straight away in my mind was like, fuck this, I'm never doing that again. But I feel like now that we are taking the video more seriously, our shop window just needs to look neat and tidy and presentable. And kind of one of the big realizations that I had was like, if you have a terrible website or dusty socials, that is ultimately communicating to your client like that you don't even care about your own social presence or kind of digital presence. And if we're selling digital presence to people, I feel like ours should probably be in check, right? So that's a really important one right there. So that is it, my gang. I've got one call to action here, in that this is part one of a 6-part series. So I have really 10 more sessions left with Matt, but ultimately it's 5, right? And I am planning on continuing to do this type of reflections video after each one. I think it's really valuable for you guys to ultimately see kind of what we're working on, what we're focused on, and ultimately, right, if these things actually make a massive difference within the business or not. So I'm spending all this money and contributing all this time for you to essentially see what are the biggest levers that you can pull within the business. So if you have made it to the end of the video, thank you so much. I really appreciate you listening to me rambling on for the past however long it is, maybe 20 minutes, half an hour or whatever. So yeah, if you enjoyed this one, if you enjoy watching the journey, then subscribe, like the video, comment below, letting me know that you're enjoying it, and I will catch you very soon. Goodbye.